Welcome to my channel, my friend. Have you ever had a feeling deep inside that words couldn't describe? Something strange. Not exactly happiness, not really sadness. It's soft, a little sweet, and a little heavy. Maybe it's love, or maybe something else. Today, I want to share a story with you. It's the beginning of something tender, a story about young emotions and quiet change. Through this story, you'll not only improve your English, but you might also begin to understand those quiet feelings inside you. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever felt something you couldn't explain? Chapter 1. The Game at Midnight. The room was quiet. The guests had all gone. Only two men sat near the fire. One was the host. The other was Vladimir Petrovich. The clock on the wall said midnight, but neither of them wanted to sleep. They were talking, remembering something important. The host smiled and said, "Let's play a game. Let's tell the story of our first love." The other man laughed. "That's a big game," he said. "Love is not a story. It's something you feel deep in your heart, something that never leaves." The host looked at him and said, "Then it's your turn. Tell us." Vladimir Petrovich was not a young man now. His hair was turning gray. His eyes were calm but tired. He didn't speak right away. He looked into the fire. His face became serious. "My story is not a normal love story," he said slowly. "It is not beautiful, but it is true." The host listened. But Vladimir did not begin. He stood up and said, "I cannot say it with words. I will write it in a notebook. Then I will read it to you next time." The host agreed. They shook hands. And that night, Vladimir went home, sat down in his room, and started to write. He wrote with his heart. He remembered everything, the days, the feelings, the faces, the joy, the sadness, the pain. He didn't want to forget. He wanted to give it a voice, so it could live again, and so he could finally say goodbye. "I was 16 when it happened," he began. "It was summer. The sky was blue. The air was soft. I lived in Moscow with my parents. We had a house with a garden. The garden had tall trees, flowers, and a small fence. It was quiet. I had no school that summer. I had no job. I had no plan. I only had time. I used that time to walk. I walked in the garden. I walked near the river. Sometimes I took a book, but I didn't read it. I looked at the sky. I listened to the wind. I waited for something. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I felt it was coming. My heart felt heavy, but in a good way. I had a strange, sweet pain. I was not sad, but not happy either. It was something in between. It was the feeling of being young. My father didn't talk much to me. He was always busy. My mother was kind but quiet. I was their only child. But they didn't watch me closely. I could do what I wanted. I had a horse. I liked to ride fast. I liked to feel the wind on my face. I imagined I was a hero in a book. I liked to dream. I didn't know who I was yet. I was only beginning. One day, something changed. The house next to ours was empty. But now someone moved in. I saw women in the window. My mother asked the servant, "Who are they?" He said, "They are the Princess Zashikin and her daughter. They came in rented carriages. They have little money." My mother said, "A princess with no carriage? That is strange." But I didn't care about the carriage. I only wanted to see the daughter. I didn't know her name yet, but I saw her face once through the garden fence. That one look was enough. She had golden hair, big gray eyes, a playful smile. Her voice was like music. She was laughing with other men. I was too young to go close, but I was old enough to feel something. My heart started to beat fast. I didn't know her, but I wanted to. That night I couldn't sleep. I was not a child anymore. Something new was in me, a fire, a storm, a light. I felt awake even in the dark. I wanted to speak to her. I wanted to be near her. I didn't know what love was, but maybe this was it. I was afraid. I was excited. I was confused, but I was alive in a new way. That is how it began. Not with words, not with a plan, but with a look, a smile, a summer evening, a feeling that touched my soul and never left again. Chapter 2. A Summer of Waiting. The days were long. The sun stayed in the sky for many hours. The light came through my window every morning. I opened my eyes slowly. I listened to the birds. I stayed in bed for some time. I didn't want to get up. I didn't have any plans. I didn't have any school. I didn't have any work. But I was not bored. My heart was full of something new, something soft, something strong, something I didn't understand. I was 16, but it felt like the first year of my life. I lived in a big house. It had a garden. In the garden, there were many trees and flowers. Some trees were tall. Some flowers were small. The garden had quiet corners. I liked to walk there. I liked to sit on the bench. I liked to think. I didn't think about big things. I didn't think about the world. I thought about myself, my own heart, my own feelings, my own thoughts. I waited for something. I didn't know what, but I waited every day. Sometimes I took a book with me. I liked books. They were my friends. But when I sat on the bench, I didn't read. I held the book in my hands. But my eyes were not on the page. My eyes looked at the sky, or the grass, or the wind in the trees. My mind was full of pictures. I imagined a girl. I imagined her face. I imagined her walking next to me. She didn't speak. I didn't speak. But it felt good. It felt right. I smiled. And then I looked around. But she was not there. Only trees. Only silence. I had a horse. A brown horse. Not too big, but strong. I liked to ride fast. I didn't use the roads. I went across the fields. I didn't follow the path. I just followed my feeling. I liked to feel the wind. I liked to see the sky above me. I liked to be free. When I rode my horse, I felt brave. I felt like a knight, a hero from a story, a man with a sword and a heart full of courage. But when I stopped the horse, I remembered I was not a hero. I was just a boy who was waiting for something to begin. My parents let me do what I wanted. My father was a calm man. He didn't smile much, but he was never angry. He gave me money. He gave me food, but he didn't give me love. My mother was often sick. She stayed in her room. She didn't talk to me. I didn't talk to her. We lived in the same house, but we were like strangers. I had no brothers. I had no sisters. I was alone. But it didn't feel bad. It felt peaceful. It gave me space to dream. And then, one day, something changed. A small thing, but a strong thing. It was just a look, just a smile, just a girl behind a garden fence. But it touched something deep inside me. I saw her from far away. She was talking to some young men. She laughed. She moved her hands in the air. She touched one of the men with a flower. They all laughed together. But then she turned her head, and her eyes looked at me, only for 1 second. But that 1 second stayed in my mind for hours. After that day, everything felt different. I still walked in the garden. I still held my book. I still rode my horse. But something was added, a feeling, a light, a hope. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to hear her voice. I wanted to know her name. But I didn't have the courage to speak to her. I stayed near the fence. I waited. I watched. I hoped. But I did nothing. I was afraid. She was older than me. She was beautiful. She was full of light. I felt small. I felt weak. I felt lost. Every day I said, "Today I will speak to her." But I didn't. I waited for a chance, but I didn't take it. The summer moved slowly, but inside me everything was fast. My heart was beating more. My dreams were stronger. My thoughts were louder. I wanted to understand what was happening, but I couldn't. It was new. It was strange. It was beautiful. It was painful. But I didn't want it to stop. This was not just summer. This was something else. This was the beginning of love. This was the beginning of change. Chapter 3. The Princess Next Door. It was an ordinary day. The sun was bright and high. The garden was quiet as usual. I walked slowly near the small fence. I often walk there now without telling anyone why. Maybe I hoped to see her again. Maybe she would be near the window. Maybe I'd hear her voice. I didn't want to go too close. I didn't want her to see me watching, but I couldn't help myself. My feet always took me to the same place, near the fence, near that house next door, the house that changed everything for me. That house was old and small. The paint had faded. The wood looked worn and dark. It looked poor. My mother once said, "That place is not for people with a name." But the woman who lived there had a title. She was a princess, Princess Zaishiekin. She wasn't rich. She wasn't young. But she had pride. She had a daughter. That was the girl I saw, the one with golden hair and silver eyes, the girl who made the air feel new, who made the sun feel warmer. She made my heart open. I didn't know her name yet, but I knew her laugh. I knew her smile when she played. She was different from the girls I knew. She didn't walk quietly or hide her face. She laughed loud. She moved freely. She told jokes and played games. She was full of life and energy. And the young men around her, strong, proud men, looked at her like she was a queen. And maybe she was. A queen of hearts. Without knowing it, she ruled mine. My mother didn't like the princess. She has no money. She wants help. She's not like us, she said. But I didn't agree. My mother saw a poor house. I saw something magical. I saw a new world, a world of feelings, a world where hearts could fly. My mother didn't understand that. She cared about dinners, clothes, and letters. But I wanted something more. I wanted fire. I wanted color. I wanted her. One evening, I saw something I'll never forget. The air was soft. I walked to the fence. There she was, on the grass, in a pink dress. Her light hair glowed. She held flowers in her hand. 4 young men sat around her laughing. She touched each of their foreheads with the flowers, and they smiled like boys. It was playful, but more than that. She had power, and she knew it. I didn't want to move. I just watched her. Her hands, her eyes, her smile, it all pulled me in. I forgot my name. I forgot the world. I just wanted her to see me, to laugh with me, to touch my forehead too. But someone noticed me. A man near her with short black hair looked my way. "Hey, young man," he said. "Why are you staring at the girl?" I froze. My face turned red. I felt like a thief. Then she turned her head and looked at me. Her gray eyes met mine. She laughed not cruelly, but strong like a wave. It pushed me away. I ran. I didn't want to hear more. I rushed to my room, closed the door, and fell on my bed. My heart jumped. I didn't know if I was happy or ashamed, but I felt something. That night I couldn't stop thinking about her. Her laugh, her eyes, the flowers. Joy and pain mixed inside me. I smiled. I closed my eyes. I didn't know her name, but in my mind I whispered it again and again. I only knew one thing: I had to see her again. And the next day, I knew I would try. Chapter 4. The First Glance. The next morning, the world looked the same. But I didn't feel the same. The trees, the flowers, the sky, all still there, but different. Everything felt new, like it had a secret glow. I didn't know the time. I didn't care. I had one thought: I wanted to see her again. The girl who laughed. The girl who looked at me. The girl who changed my world with one glance. I walked to the fence. Not fast, not slow. My heart was already there before my feet arrived. I looked at the windows of her house. Were the shutters open? Were the curtains moving? Maybe she was there. Maybe laughing again. Something moved behind the glass. My heart jumped. Was it her? I wanted to walk away. I wanted to stay. I walked up and down the street pretending not to watch. But I watched everything, every light, every shadow. I was scared to see her. More scared not to. Then I heard a voice inside me go. Speak to her. But I couldn't move. I just waited. That day, fate helped me. When I returned home, I saw a letter. It was in my mother's hand. The paper was cheap. The writing was messy. But the name stood out: Princess Zashikin. She wanted help. A conversation. Something. My mother didn't want to reply. I don't want to write in French, she said. Her Russian wasn't great either. She looked at me. Go to her, she said. Tell her I'll visit tomorrow. My heart bloomed. I tried to hide my joy. Yes, Mother, I said, and left the room. I didn't run, but I walked like I had a mission. I felt brave. I was going to see her. Even if it was just for a moment. Even if she didn't remember me. Even if she laughed again. It didn't matter. I just wanted to be near her. I reached the house. Still old. Still broken. But it looked like a palace to me. I knocked. An old servant opened the door. He didn't smile. He just pointed inside. I stepped in. The room was dark and plain. I didn't care. I searched for her. But I saw the princess, the mother, first. She sat in a chair. Her green dress looked tired. She asked my name. I answered quietly. You're very young, she said. I had no reply. Then the door opened, and she walked in. The girl from the garden. She walked like a dream. Her dress was simple, her hair tied back. But her eyes, so alive. She saw me and smiled. Not like before. It was soft, gentle, like a secret only I could hear. My heart froze, then beat wildly. I saw you yesterday, she said. You were watching. I didn't know what to say. Yes, I admitted. She laughed. This time it was soft. Will you help me with some wool? She asked. I followed her into another room. She handed me red wool. Her fingers moved like magic. She asked me questions. Where do you live? Do you ride horses? How old are you? I answered, all trying to sound calm, trying to sound grown, but I felt like a little boy. Then she looked deep into my eyes. Do you like me? She asked. My heart stopped again. Yes, I said. She smiled. Good, she said. Then we'll be friends. That word friends was both sweet and sad. I didn't want to be just her friend. But I stayed quiet and held the wool. That was the first time I saw her up close. The first time I heard her voice near my ear. The first time I felt the heat of her eyes. The first time I felt the storm inside my heart. That was the first glance that changed my life. Chapter 5. A Letter and a Visit. That evening I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with the room dark and moonlight on the wall, but all I could see was her face. Her voice whispered softly in my ears, and her smile stayed dancing in my mind. I didn't know what was happening to me. I had met girls before at school at parties, but this felt different. Zenaida was different. She wasn't just beautiful. She had something else, something strong yet gentle. She talked to me like a child, but looked at me like I mattered. I was confused, but I didn't want the feeling to stop. The next morning, the world looked brighter. I walked in the garden hoping to see her again, but I didn't. The little house was quiet, windows closed. Still I waited. Then I remembered my mother had invited the princess and her daughter to visit today. I tried not to look too excited. I didn't want anyone to know. But inside I was full of hope. I put on clean, not too fancy clothes and combed my hair. I looked in the mirror and didn't like what I saw, too thin, too young. I wanted to be a man she could love. But I was still just a boy. At 1 o'clock they came. The princess wore the same green dress. Her walk was slow, her face tired, her voice loud. She started talking immediately. She spoke about letters, money, and people she knew. She didn't stop. She took snuff, laughed, sighed. She said everything she thought. My mother listened politely, but looked bored. My father said nothing. And Zenaida. She sat upright, wearing a light blue dress. Her hair was soft. She wasn't smiling today. Her face was calm. Her eyes were quiet. She looked like a statue. Sometimes she glanced at my father. He looked back, but carefully. I sat far from her, wanting to speak, but I couldn't. She didn't even glance at me. My mother noticed. After the visit, she told my father, "That girl acts like a queen, but they have no name, no money. They are not like us." My father said nothing. He just smiled a cold smile. I said nothing either. I went to my room, sad and unsure. She hadn't laughed, hadn't played, hadn't even said hello. Maybe she had already forgotten me. Maybe yesterday meant nothing to her. Maybe I was just a child in her eyes. But then, as she left, something happened. She stopped near me and looked into my eyes. Her voice was soft. "Come to our house tonight, at 8. Don't forget." She smiled slightly and walked away. My heart jumped. My face grew warm. I stood frozen. Did she really say that? Did she want to see me again? I ran to my room and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. The clock moved slowly, but inside everything was racing. I counted the hours. I counted the minutes. I didn't eat dinner or talk to anyone. I just waited. Before 8, I dressed again. My hands shook. I fixed my collar and brushed my shoes. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "You are not a boy. You are something more now." I walked fast to her house, though my legs felt weak. The servant opened the door without a word. I heard laughter inside. I stepped in, and there she was, standing on a chair, holding a hat, surrounded by 5 strong grown men. She smiled and laughed. Then she saw me. "Voldemar is here," she said. "He is our new guest. Give him a ticket." Everyone turned to look. I felt red and shy, but proud too. She had called my name. She had smiled at me. She wanted me there. I didn't know the game or the rules, but I was ready. I was ready to be near her. I had received the second invitation, and that for me was the real beginning of everything. Chapter 6. Red Wool and Silver Eyes. The night before stayed in my heart. I couldn't stop thinking about her voice, her smile, her laugh, the way she stood on the chair. She saw me. Out of everyone she saw me, my hands were cold, but my heart was warm. That night I didn't sleep much. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I heard echoes of her laugh. I saw her face with my eyes closed. It was a strange happiness, too big for words, too strong to hide. The next morning, everything seemed different, but mostly I felt different. The house and room were the same, but I wasn't. I looked in the mirror and still didn't like my nose or my hair, but she had seen me. She had spoken to me. That was enough. I dressed slowly. I brushed my hair twice. Then I just sat there, not wanting to go anywhere. I only wanted to think about her. Later, I was sent with a letter. My mother had written back to the princess. She asked me to deliver it. I said, "Yes, mother," and went hiding my excitement. I knocked on their door. The servant gave me his usual look, no smile, no words, just pointed to the next room. The room was small and dark. The furniture was dusty. But I didn't care. I looked, listened, and then I heard her voice. She sat near the window with red wool in her hands. She smiled at me, not like the night before, but softer. She said, "Come help me. I need someone to hold this." I moved without thinking. I sat across from her. She placed the wool in my hands. Soft red threads stretched between us. I held them still while she worked. Her fingers moved quickly. The red looked bright against her skin. She kept her eyes down at first. Then she looked up. Our eyes met. Her gray eyes weren't just gray. They were silver, like moonlit water. I forgot how to breathe. She asked me about myself, my name, my age, my favorite things. I answered quietly, watching her. Her words were music. She wasn't laughing now. She spoke thoughtfully, like she truly wanted to know me. When she looked at me, I felt like the only person in the world. Then she paused and said, "You are 16. I'm 21. That makes me your big sister. You must listen to me." She smiled again, not joking, but softly, kindly. She looked at me as if I were young, but still important. I nodded. I didn't know what to say. I watched her hands. They were small, but full of life. She touched the wool, and it obeyed. She touched my heart, and it obeyed too. Then she asked, "Do you like me?" Her voice was gentle, but her eyes sharp. I couldn't lie. "Yes," I said, "I do." She laughed a soft, personal laugh, not like in the garden, not like with the other men. Then she leaned back and said, "Then we are friends, and you must always tell me the truth." I gripped the wool tighter. My hands were sweaty. My heart was loud. I wanted to say more. I wanted to tell her everything, but I stayed quiet and just looked at her, the shape of her nose, her eyes, her lips. I wanted to remember everything, to take a picture with my eyes and never forget. We sat together for a long time, talking a little, laughing a little. The red wool passed between us, thread by thread, word by word. My love grew quietly, not wild, but deep like a river underground. I didn't know what she felt. I didn't know what she wanted, but I knew what I felt. I wanted her to smile again, to look at me again. I wanted the moment to last forever. Chapter 7. The Kitten and the Soldier. The day after we rolled the red wool, I couldn't stop thinking about her hands. So light, so quick. And the way she looked at me when she said, "Then we are friends." I said yes, but in my heart, I wanted more. I didn't understand love before that moment, but now I felt it growing inside me like a flower. Quiet, but alive. Small, but strong. Her eyes were still in my dreams. Her voice stayed in my ears. And her laugh, even when soft, was like music in my soul. I walked around the house with her name in my head. I said nothing to my parents. I ate quietly. I didn't want to talk about anything else. When evening came, I walked to her house again. I was not invited, but something pulled me there. I didn't need a reason. I just needed to be near her. I knocked softly. The door opened. I heard voices inside, and I heard her laugh this time, louder, full of joy. I stepped inside slowly, afraid and excited. My eyes looked around. The room was full of people again. Some I knew, some I didn't. But my eyes only looked for her. And then I saw her. She was kneeling on the floor. Her dress touched the carpet. Her head was down, but her face was full of wonder. Her hands were moving careful and quick. And in front of her on the floor was a small kitten, gray, soft, and shaking. The kitten was looking around like it didn't understand the world. She smiled at it. She touched its nose. So small, she said. So scared. So cute. I stood and watched her. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I only felt my heart open again. Next to her stood a man, tall, strong, a soldier. I had seen him before. His face was red. His eyes were bright. His boots were shining. He smiled like he had done something great. Zenaida looked up at him and said, "You remembered." He nodded proudly. "You said you wanted a kitten with big ears." "So I found one." She laughed again and touched the kitten. Then she looked at me. Our eyes met. Just for a second. She smiled softly, but then she looked away. She played with the kitten. She gave it some milk. It drank slowly. Then it started to purr. Zenaida laughed. "Even animals love comfort," she said. The men in the room laughed with her. I did not. I was still watching, still feeling something strange, a mix of joy and pain. Joy because she was happy. Pain because the soldier brought her the gift, not me. The soldier bent down and said, "Now I want my reward." Zenaida looked up. "A reward?" she asked. He smiled and said, "Let me kiss your hand." She looked around the room. Everyone was watching. She didn't say no. She gave him her hand. He kissed it quickly. I felt cold inside, not because of the kiss, but because she looked happy. I wanted to be the one who made her happy. She stood up and looked at all of us. Her face was full of light. "Everyone wants to bring me something," she said. "A kitten, a poem, a flower. But sometimes just coming to see me is enough." She said it with a smile. But I wondered who those words were for. Maybe me, maybe not. I didn't say much that evening. I stayed near the door. I watched the kitten sleep. I watched the soldier talk. I watched her face. I tried not to show my feelings, but I think she knew. She always knew. When she walked past me, she whispered, "You are quiet today, Monsieur Voldemar." I looked up. I smiled, but I didn't answer. My heart was too full. I didn't trust my voice. That night, I went home and sat in the dark. I thought about the kitten, about her hands, about the way she looked at him. The soldier, strong, confident, a real man. I was not like him. I was young. I was nervous. I didn't have a gift to bring her, only my heart. But I didn't know if that was enough. Still, I told myself she spoke to me. She smiled at me. She remembered me. I held on to those moments like small treasures. I didn't want to lose them. I didn't know what the future would bring. But I knew one thing: I wanted to be close to her again, no matter what. And so I waited for the next moment, the next smile, the next time she would look at me and say my name. Because every time she did, I felt more alive. Chapter 8. A New Guest at Dinner. The next morning was quiet. I didn't hear laughter from the house next door. No voices, no footsteps. The windows were closed. The air felt still. It was one of those days where everything waits. The trees don't move. The birds don't sing. Even the sky looks slow. I walked around the garden without a plan. I touched the flowers, but I didn't see them. I opened a book, but I didn't read the words. My heart was busy. My heart was asking questions. Why didn't she look at me more yesterday? Why did she smile more at the soldier? Did she still remember me? Or was I just one of many boys around her? When I came back inside, my mother was sitting in the front room. She was writing a letter. She looked at me and said, "The princess and her daughter are coming to dinner today." My heart jumped, but I stayed quiet. I didn't want to show how much I cared. My mother added, "They are neighbors. It is polite to invite them. But that girl, she is proud." My mother didn't like Zenaida. I could see it in her face and her voice and the way she said that girl instead of her name. But I didn't care. Zenaida was coming to our house. I would see her again. I would hear her voice. I would sit near her at the table. That was enough for me. When the time came, I wore my best clothes. I stood in the hallway, trying not to look too ready. My hands were cold. My heart was loud. Then the bell rang. I held my breath. The door opened. I heard voices. I heard the soft steps of her shoes. And then I saw her. Zenaida walked into the room like a queen, but not a queen with a crown. A queen with quiet power. Her head was high. Her eyes looked at everything. She didn't smile too much, but she didn't look cold either. She looked calm, strong, beautiful. She wore a simple dress, but on her it looked like something from a dream. Her hair was tied in a new way. Her hands were still. Her voice was low. She said hello to my mother. She nodded to my father. Then she looked at me. Only for a second. But that second was everything. We all sat at the table. The princess, her mother, spoke a lot. She talked about problems, about people who owed her money, about letters she had written. My mother smiled politely, but her eyes were tired. My father said little. He listened. He gave small answers. But he was watching Zenaida. I saw it, and I think she saw it too. Zenaida didn't say much. She answered questions. She looked at the food. She moved her hands slowly. But something about her was different. She wasn't playful like before. She didn't make jokes. She didn't laugh loudly. She sat like a statue, alive but distant. I wanted to speak to her. I wanted to make her smile. But I was afraid. I was afraid to say the wrong thing. I was afraid to lose the magic. My father asked her a question in French. She answered with perfect words. Her voice was soft, but sure. I looked at her in surprise. She was not just pretty. She was smart. She was strong. She was everything I was not. My mother watched her with cold eyes. My father watched her with curious eyes. I watched her with love. The dinner ended slowly. My mother stood. My father helped the princess with her shawl. I moved back, trying to find a chance to say something. But then it was too late. They were leaving. Zenaida walked to the door. I followed with my eyes. She passed by me. She didn't stop. She didn't speak. But then, just as she stepped out, she turned her head. She looked at me, and she whispered, "Come tonight at 8. That small sentence hit my heart like lightning. It was soft. It was fast. But it burned into me. She still remembered. She still wanted me near. I stood there for a long time after she left. My mother was talking to my father. They didn't see me. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't know that one sentence had changed everything again. That night, I didn't wait until 8. I went early. I walked slowly. I knocked on the door. I was nervous, but I was ready. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew she wanted me there. That was enough. Because in a world full of doubts, that one small invitation felt like the greatest gift of all. Chapter 9. The Game of Love. That evening, the sky was soft with pink clouds and gold light. The birds were singing less, as if they too were getting ready for sleep. But my heart was not sleepy. It was running. It was wide awake. I walked to her house with quiet steps but loud feelings. Her words were still echoing in my mind. Come tonight, at 8. That sentence was a light in my dark thoughts. It told me I was not forgotten. It told me I still had a place near her. When I knocked on the door, a servant opened it and let me in. The room inside was warm with candlelight dancing on the walls. There were people there again. The usual group, the soldier, the poet, the doctor, a young man with a guitar. Zenaida sat in the middle like always, but tonight she was different. She was full of life again. Her eyes sparkled. Her laugh returned. It felt like summer had come back to her face. "Ah, here comes our young friend," she said when she saw me. I smiled and sat quietly. The others were talking, joking, telling stories, but I was only watching her. Every time she moved, I noticed. Every time she laughed, my heart lifted. She was like the sun. Everyone wanted her attention. Everyone wanted to be close. Then she clapped her hands. "Let's play a game," she said. Everyone turned to her. "Let's play a game of love." There was laughter, some nervous, some excited. "Each of you," she continued, "must tell what love means to you, but not with big words. Tell a small story, or say it in a joke, or a truth. But it must be real." One by one they spoke. The soldier said love was like a battle, you win or lose. The poet said love was a song you forget the words to. The doctor said love was a sickness without a cure. The guitar player sang a short melody. Then it was my turn. She looked at me, smiling. "And you, Monsieur Voldemar?" My mouth was dry. My hands were cold. But I spoke. "Love," I said, "is when you feel something in your chest that you can't explain, but you know it is true." Everyone was silent for a moment. Then someone laughed kindly. But Zenaida didn't laugh. She nodded. "That's a good answer," she said. She stood up and walked around the room slowly. "Love," she said, "is a game. But it's also serious. It plays with us, and sometimes we don't know the rules. Sometimes we think we are winning, but maybe we are not." The room was quiet again. Then she took a scarf and tied it around her eyes. "Let's play a new game," she said. "I will guess who is who just by touch." The men laughed, happy to play. She walked around blindfolded. She touched someone's hand. "You are the poet," she said. She was right. She touched another. "You are the doctor." Again correct. Then she came to me. My heart was beating like thunder. She touched my fingers gently. She stopped. "You are our young friend," she said. I smiled. She knew me even in the dark. When the game ended, she took off the scarf and looked at all of us. Her face was calm again. "Thank you for playing," she said. "Now go home. I'm tired." The others stood up. They thanked her. They left one by one. But before I could leave, she stopped me with her eyes. She didn't speak. She just looked. And in that look, I felt something deep. It was not loud. It was not clear. But it was powerful. It told me she saw me. It told me I was not just a boy to her. I was something more. I walked home in the night air feeling warm inside. I didn't know what was happening between us, but I knew something was there. Something real. Something strong. And maybe this game of love was starting to become something true. Chapter 10. Under the Same Scarf. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on my bed, eyes wide open, heart still full of the evening's light. The words from the game were still alive inside me. Love is a battle. Love is a sickness. Love is a game. But for me, love was none of those things. It was a scarf tied across my eyes, yet I still saw her. It was the way her hand found mine in the dark. It was the way she said my name without needing to speak it. That scarf was only a piece of cloth for others, but for me, it became the bridge between my dream and reality. The next day, I didn't go to the garden. I didn't walk in circles waiting. I stayed in my room, quiet thinking. My heart was afraid. Afraid that it was all just a game to her. Afraid that I was still only a boy in her eyes. But then, as if she could feel my fear from afar, there was a soft knock on the door. A letter. A small piece of paper folded gently. No name on the outside, but I knew it was from her. Inside were just a few words. Come to the garden. I have something to show you. My hands shook as I read it. I rushed to the garden like a wind with no direction. She was there near the rose bush waiting. She wore a white dress. Her hair was tied back. She looked simple, but to me, she looked like something from another world. She smiled when she saw me. Not her usual big smile. A soft one, a private one, a smile just for me. Do you remember the scarf? She asked. Yes, I said quietly. She took it from her pocket and held it out. Let's play again, she whispered. She tied it gently across my eyes. The world became dark. But in that darkness, I felt her hands. I felt her breath. I felt her near me closer than ever. Now guess what I'm thinking, she said. I smiled. You're thinking I'm still a child. She laughed soft and sweet. Wrong. I'm thinking you're growing fast. I felt her fingers touch mine. Then she took my hand and placed it on her heart. Do you feel that? She asked. Her heart was beating fast, like mine, like we were two birds flying close together. This, she said, is not a game. I took off the scarf slowly. Our eyes met. The air around us felt still. Time was quiet. My voice was shaking when I asked, why me? Why not the others? They're older, smarter. She looked at me serious now. Because you see me like no one else does. They play. You feel. She sat down on the bench. I sat beside her. We didn't talk for a while. We just listened to the wind in the trees, to the sounds of life all around. She looked at the sky and said, sometimes I'm scared too. You, I said, but you're so brave. She shook her head. I wear smiles like armor. But inside, I don't know everything. I make mistakes. I hurt people. I get lost. I wanted to say something smart, something strong, but I was quiet. Then I said, even if you get lost, I will still be here, in the same garden. She looked at me, eyes wet, but not sad. You're not a child, Voldemar, she said softly. Not anymore. Then she leaned in and kissed my forehead. Just once. Just lightly. But it was enough to make my whole world shake. We sat under the same sky, under the same scarf, no longer playing, no longer guessing, just being there, together. And in that moment, I knew that love was not a game. It was a feeling that grew quietly, like a flower in the shade, slow and secret, but real. Chapter 11. A Long Night with Lightning. That night the air felt heavy. The sky was full of gray clouds, and the wind had changed its voice. It was no longer soft. It whispered something sharp, like a warning. I stayed in my room, looking out the window. The trees moved fast. The world was waiting for something, and I was waiting for her. After what happened under the scarf, I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't rest. My chest was full of feelings I didn't know how to carry. Joy and fear, hope and doubt. Her kiss on my forehead was still burning like a candle that never went out. I closed my eyes and saw her smile. I opened them and saw lightning far away. The rain came suddenly. First just a few drops, then a storm. The wind hit the windows. Thunder spoke like an angry god. But inside me there was a different kind of storm. I wanted to run. I wanted to see her again, even if just for 1 minute, even if only to say good night. I took my coat and went outside. My father's voice shouted behind me, but I didn't listen. My feet moved fast on the wet ground. The garden was dark and wild. Trees were dancing, leaves were flying, and I was there alone but not afraid. I reached her house, but the lights were off. Everything was quiet. My heart dropped. Maybe she was asleep. Maybe she didn't want to see me again. Maybe it really was just a soft moment under a scarf and nothing more. But then I saw a light in the window above, just a small one like a candle. I waited under the tree near the wall. I watched. The wind pushed against me, but I stayed. My clothes were wet, my hands were shaking, but I waited. Then something happened. The curtains moved. A face appeared. It was her. She looked down and saw me. Her eyes were tired, but they still held that soft fire. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. But she didn't turn away. She stood there watching me, like I was a question she couldn't answer. Then lightning flashed. For 1 second, the sky became white. I saw her face clearly. She looked sad. The rain fell harder. And in that second, something changed in my heart. I realized I didn't understand her. Not really. I loved her, but I didn't know who she truly was. She was kind, but also distant. She gave me a kiss, but then walked away. She smiled, but carried pain. She was close, but also far. I wanted to save her. I wanted to be her world. But I was still just learning how big her world was. I was still just a boy standing in the rain thinking love meant one thing while she knew it meant many. The light in the window went out. She was gone, but I didn't move. I stayed under that tree for a long time, letting the storm speak, letting the water touch my skin, letting my heart learn how to feel without always needing answers. I walked home when the storm was quiet. The sky was still crying, but softer now. My shoes were full of mud. My coat was heavy, but something in me felt clean. I didn't knock on the door. I climbed through the window. I sat on my bed cold and wet, but I didn't care. That night, I didn't sleep. I just lay there thinking, not of games or kisses, not of love songs or poetry. I thought of her eyes in the window. I thought of the sadness in her face. I thought of how love could be beautiful and confusing at the same time. I thought maybe that's what growing up meant. Learning that feelings don't always follow rules. That people can care for you but still walk away. That sometimes the most powerful things in life happen in silence during storms when no one else is watching. And when the morning came, I was still awake. The birds were singing again. The clouds were running away. But I was not the same boy anymore. Something inside me had changed. Something deep. And I knew. I would never forget that long night with lightning. Chapter 12. A Cold Face, a Secret Look. The morning after the storm was full of sunshine, but I felt no warmth. My clothes were dry, my hair combed, my shoes clean, but my chest was still heavy. I walked through the garden slowly. The same flowers were there, the same smells, the same wind in the trees. But something was different. Something inside me had changed. I looked at every leaf, every petal, and asked myself, will she come today? But my heart whispered, don't expect too much. I sat on the old bench, the one near the roses. I waited. Time moved slow. My eyes watched the gate again and again. Every sound, every step made my heart jump, but she didn't come. I stayed until the sun climbed high. Then I went back to the house, but my heart stayed there waiting without me. Later that day, my father said we were going to visit the neighbors again. I tried to act calm. I said okay, without emotion, but inside I was burning. I wanted to see her again. I wanted to ask her why she looked at me like that through the window, why her eyes were sad, why she disappeared into the night. We arrived at the house. The princess welcomed us. Her smile was sweet, but I looked past her. I searched for one face, and then I saw her. She stood at the end of the room talking to someone older. She didn't look at me, not even once. I stood there frozen. I wanted to go to her, to say something, but I couldn't move. Finally, she turned, just for a second. Her eyes met mine, but there was no smile, no warmth, only silence, cold, like the morning frost. Then she looked away again and continued talking like nothing had happened. That 1 second was enough to break something in me. I didn't understand. How could she be so far when she was so near? Dinner came. We sat around the table. The candles danced. The food was warm. People laughed and told stories, but I was not part of it. I was somewhere else, stuck in that moment when she looked at me without feeling. My spoon touched my plate, but I tasted nothing. At one point, she said something that made others laugh. She smiled wide and bright. But it wasn't the smile she gave me in the garden. That one was gone. I watched her laugh with others. I watched her speak softly to an older man. I watched her eyes shine for someone else, and I knew something was slipping away from me. After dinner, I walked alone in the hallway. My mind was loud. My heart was loud. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I turned a corner, and there she was, alone, looking out the window, the same window from last night. I stepped closer. "Hello," I said. She turned slowly. "Hello." Her voice was calm, like I was a stranger. "I waited for you today," I said. She looked at me, her face still. "Why?" "Because of yesterday," I whispered. She sighed. "Yesterday was just a moment." My hands felt cold. My voice cracked. But it meant something to me. She looked away. "You're sweet, Voldemar, but you are still learning what love really is." "I'm learning," I said, "but not because of books, because of you." She touched my hand gently. "Don't hurt yourself for me." "Too late," I said. She gave me one last look. That look stayed with me forever. It had love. It had pain. It had a secret. A secret she wouldn't tell. A secret I didn't know how to ask about. And then she walked away. That night, I walked home slowly. The stars were above, but I didn't look at them. I looked down at my shoes, at the road, at the shadow I was becoming. I knew I still loved her, but I also knew love could be quiet. Love could be one look that says everything and nothing. Love could be a cold face that once held warmth. A secret look that never speaks again. And that's when I learned Sometimes love doesn't end in goodbye. It ends in silence. Chapter 13. A ride, a bow, a fear. The days after that silent moment felt longer than any season. I walked the garden as usual, but I no longer expected to see her. I watched the trees and listened to the birds, but they sounded different now. I still went through the same routines, reading, walking, smiling at guests, but my heart was somewhere else. It was back in that hallway where she looked at me and said, "You are still learning what love really is." I didn't want to learn. I wanted to feel, to believe, to hope. But her eyes had told me a truth I wasn't ready for. One afternoon, I heard the sound of horses outside. I looked through the window and saw a carriage. A man in a dark coat stood near it talking to the princess, and her. She was laughing. Her hair moved with the wind. Her hands held the side of the carriage. And the man, he was not young, but not old. Strong shoulders, confident face. The kind of man who doesn't need to speak to be noticed. My father stood beside me and smiled. "That's Count Malevsky," he said. "He's close to the princess. A regular guest." I didn't answer. My eyes were on her. Her dress was blue that day, and the color made her look even more beautiful. Or maybe it was just my imagination making her shine brighter, even as she faded from my world. The man helped her into the carriage. Then he looked back and saw me watching. He gave a little bow, more of a joke than respect, and she followed his eyes. For a brief moment, our gazes touched again. But this time, hers was different. No sadness, no warmth. Just something unreadable, like a curtain had been pulled between us. Then she turned her head, laughed at something the man said, and the carriage began to move. I stood frozen, my fingers against the glass. I wanted to run after them. I wanted to stop the horses. I wanted to ask her why she smiled at him like that, why she looked through me. But I didn't move. I just stood there quiet and stiff, like a painting of someone forgotten. That night, I sat in my room for hours. I tried to write in my notebook, but the words made no sense. I tore the page out. I stared at the ceiling. I stared at my hands. They were shaking. Not from cold, but from something I didn't understand then fear. A kind of fear that rises when you know someone is walking out of your life and you can't stop them. The next day I saw her again in the garden. She was alone. The air was soft, the sky clear. I walked up to her slowly. She turned and smiled, not the warm one, not the secret one, but a polite one. "Are you riding again today?" I asked. "Maybe," she said. "It depends on the Count." I felt the word Count strike me like a stone. "You enjoy his company." She looked at me surprised. "He's kind and interesting." I swallowed hard. "Do you love him?" She laughed gently. "You're too young to ask such things." But I feel something I said. "Isn't that enough?" She touched my arm. "Feelings are beautiful, Voldemar, but they don't always lead where we want." "Then why give them?" I asked, my voice suddenly louder. She looked at me serious now. "Because sometimes we just want to feel alive." I didn't understand her then. I wanted answers, but all she gave me were puzzles. She walked away again, and I didn't follow. My legs wouldn't move. My heart was too full. And for the first time, I was afraid not of losing her, but of not understanding her at all. That evening, I saw the Count again. He tipped his hat to me with that same smile, the one that wasn't really friendly. I nodded, but inside I was burning. I watched them ride together, her hair flying her laughter light in the air. And I stood there, a boy holding too many questions, afraid of the answers. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window listening to the wind, asking it the same question over and over. Why does she smile more when she's with him? And the wind didn't answer. It only whispered things I didn't understand. But deep inside, I knew something was changing. I was learning that love wasn't always soft. Sometimes it felt like fear. fear of being forgotten, fear of not being enough, fear of the truth that love could walk past you and not look back. Chapter 14. The Princess and the Prisoner. The next morning, the house felt quieter than usual. Maybe it was just my thoughts making everything feel far away. Or maybe the silence was real. I walked slowly down the hallway and stopped at the window, the same window where I once saw her through the glass on that stormy night. The sky was gray now, not heavy with rain, but still and soft like a blanket pulled over everything. I touched the cold glass with my fingertips and remembered her hand brushing mine, her laughter in the garden, her eyes looking at someone else. My heart felt heavier than ever, and yet I couldn't stop hoping she might appear again, just once more with that smile, meant only for me. In the afternoon, I walked into the drawing room. I found the princess sitting on her velvet chair. She was reading a letter and looked tired. The light from the window made the silver in her hair shine like frost. She looked up when I entered. She gave me a small nod. "Come here, young man," she said. I walked to her, like a child walking to a teacher. "Tell me," she asked, "what is happening in your heart these days?" Her voice was calm, but I felt like she already knew the answer. I looked down. "I don't know," I said. "I feel many things, but none of them make sense." She smiled gently. That is how the heart begins to grow." She folded the letter and placed it on the table beside her. Then she looked out the window thoughtful. "Do you know," she said, "what it means to love someone who doesn't belong to you?" I didn't answer, but I felt the question like a weight on my chest. "Zenaida," she whispered, "has a strong spirit, but she is still a prisoner." "A prisoner?" I asked. "She's free. She can go wherever she wants." The princess looked at me, her eyes full of something I didn't yet understand. "Not all prisons have walls, my dear boy. Sometimes the strongest chains are invisible." I stood quietly, unsure if I should ask what she meant. But before I could speak again, she motioned me closer. "She is clever, your Zenaida. She plays many games, not just with you, with herself, with the world." I sat beside her, heart racing. "Does she love the Count?" The princess sighed. "Love. That's a heavy word for a girl like her. Maybe she dreams of it. Maybe she fears it. Or maybe she's simply trying to survive in her own way." I wanted to defend Zenaida. I wanted to say she was kind, beautiful, and real, but the words stayed in my mouth. Somewhere deep inside, I was beginning to see what the princess meant. Zenaida was not just a girl in a garden. She was a storm of feelings, a mystery I could never solve, a fire that both warmed and burned. Later that evening, I saw her again. She was sitting on a bench under the tree, the same tree where we once shared stories and laughter. She was alone, her eyes on the ground. I walked up to her, and she looked at me slowly. "You came," she said. "I always come," I said quietly. She smiled, but it was not the bright smile I remembered. It was tired, distant. "Sometimes I wish you wouldn't," she said, "because you still believe." I sat beside her. "What else can I do?" She didn't answer right away. She looked up at the sky and then back at me. "Do you think I'm a good person, Voldemar?" The question surprised me. "Yes," I said. "I think you're kind." She laughed, but there was sadness in it. "Kind I hurt people without meaning to." "You never hurt me," I said. She turned her head. "Haven't I?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her that every word, every look, even every goodbye was still beautiful to me. But the truth was already clear in her eyes. She was a prisoner of her feelings, of her fears, of something I couldn't see. And maybe I was her prisoner too. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered. She touched my hand softly. "You never had me." The words hit like ice. But she said them with so much care that they didn't feel cruel. They felt like truth, the kind that breaks and heals at the same time. She leaned forward and kissed my cheek. Then she stood up and walked away slowly, her dress moving like water in the wind. That night I didn't cry. I just lay in my bed and looked at the ceiling. I saw stars that weren't there. I heard her voice in my mind. I felt her hand still holding mine, and I realized she had never belonged to anyone, not the Count. Not me, not even herself. Zenaida was the kind of person who left a mark you could never wash away. And maybe that was her prison. And mine too. Chapter 15. The Garden Talk. The garden seemed the same, but everything felt different. The flowers no longer had their sweet scent, and the grass no longer felt soft beneath my feet. I followed the path where we used to play and laugh. But now those memories felt like echoes from a dream. I kept glancing at the bench where she always sat, silently wishing she might appear. One quiet afternoon she was there, alone, motionless, as though waiting for something or someone. I approached slowly, not wanting to break the moment. She didn't look up. Her gaze stayed on the ground beneath the tree where some fallen petals rested. Her dress was plain pale with a soft blue ribbon tied in her hair. I said nothing, just sat beside her. The silence was thick, yet not cold. It held all the unspoken words we didn't dare to say. Finally, she turned to me and said softly, "You came again." "I always come," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Even knowing I might break your heart?" Her eyes looked weary, filled with questions and maybe pain. "Maybe that's what love is," I said, showing up even when it hurts. She didn't answer. She only held a petal between her fingers and stared. When I was little, she said I believed flowers could speak. And what did they say? I asked gently. That I was free, that I could fly. Now they only whisper things I wish I didn't hear. There was a quiet ache in her words. I realized her laughter, her stories. Maybe they had all been masks. "You don't look happy," I said. She gave a soft, broken laugh. "That's because I'm not. I wasn't ready for that kind of truth." I looked down. "Can I help?" She turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "You already do, just by being here. But you can't change what I am." "And what are you?" I asked. "I'm still searching. Maybe for peace. Maybe for love. I don't even know." We sat in silence again. The wind moved her ribbon gently like it was dancing with her sorrow. She looked at me. "Do you remember the first time we met?" "Yes." "You were laughing, and you were staring," she said with a smile. "I didn't know then," I whispered, "that you'd become the most important part of my life." Her smile faded. "What if I told you I never asked for that?" "I know you didn't," I said, "but I gave it anyway." She rose slowly, took a few steps, then turned. "You're a good boy, Voldemar. Too good for someone like me. Why would you say that?" I asked. "Because I can't be still. My heart wanders. Some days I think I love, the next I don't. I hurt people because I don't know how not to." I stood up, heart pounding. "Then let me stay. Let me learn with you." She shook her head. "Someday I'll be gone. Don't wait for someone who can't stay." The golden light of sunset filtered through the trees. She stepped close and touched my face gently. "I wish I met you when I was different." Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't cry. I just memorized her, her voice, her face, her sadness. She leaned in and kissed my forehead. "Goodbye for now." Then she walked away without looking back. I stood there until night fell, until stars filled the sky like quiet hopes. I didn't know if I'd see her again, but I knew that moment in the garden was real, and I would carry it with me for the rest of my life. Chapter 16. The Poem and the Glance. The following days moved slowly, as if time itself had grown unsure. Everything looked familiar, but nothing felt right. Her absence wasn't loud. It was quiet. yet present in every breath I took and every space she used to fill with light. I didn't see her in the garden. Her voice no longer drifted through the air. Even the others in the house spoke less, as if a cloud of silence had settled over us all. I stayed in my room thinking. It wasn't quite sadness. It wasn't anger. It was something softer, something heavier, a dull ache that wouldn't go away. One day I found a notebook on my shelf, a gift from my mother. I hadn't touched it since the day she gave it to me, back when life felt simple. I opened it to a blank page. Without a plan, I picked up a pen and began to write. Not a story, not a letter, a poem. About her smile which made the world fade away, about her voice, a melody only I seemed to hear, about her eyes that were always elsewhere. The words came like rain, gentle, steady, unfiltered. I didn't stop. I didn't edit. I just wrote until the page was full. And when I looked at it, I realized something. I had written my heart down. Every feeling, every truth, it was all there. I folded the paper and held it trembling. I wanted her to have it even if she never read it, even if she laughed. It didn't belong to me anymore. That evening I walked to her house. I saw the maid near the gate. I handed her the poem. "Please give this to her. Don't say it's from me." She smiled and nodded. I turned and left quickly before doubt could stop me. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed imagining everything, her reading it, her smiling, her crying. Then in the quiet, I heard soft footsteps. The moonlight lit my room like silver. I turned to the window and saw her. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just stood there watching me through the glass. Her eyes were full, but not with sadness, not with joy. Something deeper. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. That one glance said more than any letter ever could. She had read it. She had felt it. And maybe she had felt what I did too, even if only for a second. Then she turned and disappeared into the night. I didn't follow. I didn't call out. I sat there for hours, listening to the night, holding that quiet moment like a treasure. The next morning, I returned to the garden. The breeze played with the leaves. I sat on the bench. Beneath it, I saw something. A flower wrapped in a blue ribbon, the same ribbon from her hair. I picked it up slowly and closed my eyes. She had answered me not with words, not with a letter, but with this, a flower, a ribbon, a memory. And that was enough. Chapter 17. The Doctor's Warning. It was late summer, and the days began to shrink while the nights brought a soft, creeping chill that made you miss the warmth of the fire, even if it only lived in your memory. Everything outside seemed slow and quiet, but something inside me started to move quickly, like a weight building, with no clear shape or name. I felt uneasy without knowing why, as if my heart was whispering that something wasn't right, but I wasn't ready to listen. I didn't want to believe that the girl I once wrote poems for, the girl who chased butterflies with a kitten in her arms, was quietly changing into someone I didn't recognize. Her laughter became rare, and when it came, it sounded distant, like it came from a place that wasn't inside her anymore. One morning, I saw her walking in the garden with a man I had never seen before, someone older, but not yet old. He wore dark clothes, carried a small black bag, and walked with a calm seriousness that made him seem important. I didn't speak to him, but I watched from my window as they sat together on a bench under the trees. She spoke slowly, and he listened carefully, sometimes holding her wrist as though feeling something deeper than a pulse. My heart began to race. Was he a doctor? Was she unwell? My thoughts ran wild, each one darker than the last. Later that day, I waited near the gate, pretending to read, hoping I might find out something more. When the man came out, I greeted him politely, and he paused, studying me with quiet interest before offering a gentle smile. "You are a friend of the family?" he asked. I nodded quickly and said, "Yes, I know the princess a little." He looked thoughtful, then said, "Sometimes knowing a little is harder than knowing everything," and I didn't know how to respond. I asked him directly, "Is she all right?" And his eyes moved from the trees back to me with a sadness that made me hold my breath. "She's strong," he said softly, "but sometimes strength alone isn't enough." I asked again, more firmly this time, "Is she sick?" And after a long pause, he nodded. "She needs peace. Her heart carries more than it shows. Some things can't be seen, but weigh just as heavily." I told him I care about her, and his voice turned even gentler. "Then don't ask too many questions," he said. "Just be near. That is sometimes enough." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing at the gate, heart pounding with the fear of losing something I never truly had. I wanted to run to her, to hold her hand and say, "Please don't go. Stay with me." But I didn't move. That evening, I saw her again in the garden, walking slowly, her fingers brushing each leaf like she was saying goodbye. I went to her, and she turned before I spoke. Her face looked pale, but her expression was calm, even kind. "I saw the doctor," I said quietly. She nodded and answered, "Yes, he's kind." "Is something wrong?" I asked. And she looked into my eyes for a long time before speaking. "Life isn't always about answers," she said. "Sometimes it's about living with the questions." "Are you going away?" I whispered. She didn't reply with words. She simply reached out and touched my arm. Her fingers were cold. "Don't be sad," she said. "We all leave something behind, but we also carry something with us." "What will you carry?" I asked softly, almost afraid to hear the answer. She gave a quiet smile and said, "Your eyes." Then she turned and walked away once more. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the wind speaking through the windows like a voice I couldn't silence. I thought about her hands, her laughter, her strange and gentle words, and how every moment now felt like a chapter ending. But I wasn't ready for the last page. I wanted more walks, more silences, more poems. Yet life does not wait for you to be ready. It moves ahead, and you must follow with an open heart, full eyes, and the memory of a touch that never fades. Chapter 18. I know now. The days that followed were like walking in fog, where everything looked familiar but felt unreachable. I ate. I walked. I heard voices around me, but none of it truly touched me. I kept searching for her in the garden, hoping to catch even a glimpse of her face or a trace of her smile. But the garden remained still. The air no longer held her perfume. The windows of her house stayed shut. It was as if she had already become a memory, and I was the only one still trying to hold on. I kept telling myself she would return, that maybe she would appear again speaking nonsense that made sense only to us. I didn't want to say goodbye. I didn't know how to let go. Then one morning, everything changed. As I walked by her house, I noticed something different. The curtains were open, the front door wide. Two men carried a large trunk down the stairs, and her maid stood nearby wiping her tears with a handkerchief. I froze, my heart beating faster than I could think. I already knew what this meant. She was leaving. No farewell, no letter, no chance to ask why. I hurried to the gate, hoping someone would explain what was happening, anything at all. The maid saw me and gave a small nod. Her eyes were soft, but she didn't smile. I asked where the princess had gone. She turned away and whispered, "To rest, far away. The doctor says she needs quiet. No visitors." I stood still, swallowing every emotion like a storm rising inside. I had imagined our story taking many turns, but never silence. I turned and walked away with heavy feet, not sure where I was going. I wandered the streets for hours, seeing nothing clearly. Everything around me reminded me of her. Every bench we sat on, Every flower we passed, every breeze that brushed my skin, they all whispered her name. That night I returned home and sat at my desk, where I had once written poems for her. One of them still rested in the drawer, folded neatly, like a secret waiting to be remembered. I read it again, and this time the words felt like they came from another life. A life full of wonder and confusion, beauty and sadness, all wrapped in her smile. I put the poem back and closed the drawer gently, as if saying goodbye to that version of myself. Later, my father knocked and handed me a letter. "This came for you," he said. I opened it slowly. It wasn't from her, it was from her aunt. Just a short note. She asked me to tell you thank you for your words, for your eyes. She remembers you kindly. I read it again and again, then pressed it to my chest. In that moment, I understood something fully for the first time. I knew that I loved her not like a song or a story, but with the part of myself that didn't know how to speak it. The part that hurt when she hurt. The part that smiled when she smiled. I didn't know if she loved me. Maybe she didn't. But that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I had felt something real. Something I would always carry. On the last day of summer, I went to the garden once more. I sat on the bench where we once talked. The sky was soft with pink and gold, and a bird sang quietly from the trees. I closed my eyes and remembered everything. The red wool, the kitten, the scarf, the secret glances, the quiet poem. And the way she once said, "Your eyes." When I opened my eyes, I smiled. I didn't have all the answers, but I had clarity. I didn't have her, but I had love. I knew now. Chapter 19. The Silent Discovery. The seasons began to shift. The air felt cooler. The leaves turned red and gold, and the days grew shorter. Life kept moving around me. People laughed, talked, and worked as usual, but I had changed inside. I was no longer the boy who watched a girl laugh under a tree or played games with her. That version of me still existed, but now he carried something quiet and lasting, an ache that didn't hurt but never left. And in that stillness, something else began to grow, not sorrow or happiness, but quiet understanding. One evening, my father came home earlier than usual. He seemed tired in a different way, like a man burdened by a heavy thought. He sat in his chair without much to say. I tried speaking to him, but he answered with short, distant replies. He wasn't upset, just somewhere far away, locked inside his thoughts. I began to wonder if he too carried something deep within a memory, a feeling, a silent story he couldn't tell. Then the next morning, something happened that would change everything. I walked into my father's study looking for a book. On the desk was an envelope, no name, just sealed and neatly placed. I knew I shouldn't touch it, but something inside pushed my hand forward. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter written in graceful handwriting. I didn't want to read it, but my eyes moved on their own. It was her handwriting, but the letter wasn't meant for me. It was written to my father. I froze. My hands began to shake. I read just enough to understand, and suddenly, it all became clear. What had been hidden was now plain to see. She had loved him, not me, my father. Her late visits, the walks, the glances I never understood, now they all made sense. My mind filled with noise, but I couldn't move. I stood there, breathing slowly, lost in a strange kind of silence. I returned the letter to its place and quietly left the room. My legs felt weak beneath me. I sat down in the hallway, leaning against the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. There was only silence. Not the soft silence of peace, but the kind that shouts without a sound, pressing heavily on the chest. I didn't feel anger, not even envy, just a deep sadness for her, for me, and for my father. It was a story I thought belonged to me, but it never really had. That night, I looked at my father again, and I truly saw him for the first time, the sadness in his eyes. The way he stared at the window, hoping to see someone. the silence that followed him everywhere. He had loved her too, but his love, like mine, had remained hidden. Maybe they had shared something. Maybe they hadn't. I would never know for sure. But now I understood more than before. I had learned something life-changing, not through words, but through quiet. A quiet so full it became a part of me. Heavy, silent, and unforgettable. Back in my room, I lay on my bed and looked at the ceiling. I tried to picture her face, but it seemed different now, softer, more distant, as if fading into memory. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I only listened to the sound of my heart beating slowly. And in that silent room, I realized something new. First love doesn't always feel sweet. Sometimes it teaches through heartache instead of joy. Sometimes the strongest feelings leave no words behind. But even in that silence, something inside you begins to grow. Chapter 20. A final smile. Time passed, and it didn't stop to ask how I was feeling. The world kept turning without pause. Leaves continued to fall, streets turned cold, and people readied themselves for winter. And I moved forward too, not because I wished to, but because life offered no other choice. Even with sorrow in my chest, I kept walking. Even with unanswered questions, I kept breathing. I returned to my books, to my old routines, to the little habits that once made up my days. But inside, I was no longer just a boy who admired flowers and memorized poems. I had become someone who knew what love felt like and how it sometimes ends in silence. I stopped visiting the house next door. I avoided it. It stood closed and still like a finished chapter. One day I heard someone had bought the place. A new family moved in full of energy and sound, but I didn't want to meet them. I didn't want new laughter to replace the voice I still remembered. Sometimes I stood near the old gate, pretending to look at something else while my heart searched for her shadow. Of course she never returned. I didn't expect her to. But then one early morning, something unexpected came. A letter. It wasn't from her, but it was about her. It was brief. It said she had passed away. The message was gentle. It said she hadn't suffered, that she had smiled when someone said her name, that she had kept certain letters until the very end. I held the letter tightly in both hands. I didn't know what emotion to feel. Was it sorrow, love, or something? Without a name floating in between. I walked out to the garden and sat under the same tree where we once talked. The same place where she had touched a flower and smiled at nothing at all. The same spot where I first learned how deeply the heart could feel. I closed my eyes and remembered her laughter, the scarf we shared, the silent gift of a flower, the way she looked at me as if she saw something I couldn't see myself. I thought about how much I hadn't understood back then, and how much I still didn't fully understand now. Yet somehow I didn't feel regret. Not really, because some feelings are real, even if they don't last forever. Some people stay with us always, even if they only walk beside us for a little while. And as I sat there alone with the wind, I felt something unexpected. Not sorrow, not joy, but peace. As if everything that had happened was meant to happen exactly as it did. I opened my eyes and smiled. A soft smile. A quiet smile. Not the kind that comes from laughter, but from knowing something deep and true. I had loved. I had learned. And even though I had lost, I had received something rare. Love, especially your first, doesn't always stay forever, but it gives you something. A story, a moment, a change, and sometimes that's enough. More than enough. Chapter 21. Years later, time moved forward like water slipping through open hands. Seasons passed and I slowly grew into someone new. My height changed. My voice deepened, and the way people looked at me began to shift. They no longer saw a boy with curious eyes. They saw a man shaped by time and quiet memories. Faces came and went. Some drifted through my life quickly, while others lingered for a little while. But no one ever truly saw the part of me that stayed hidden, the memory of her silent and whole. I still carried those moments warm, summer light, soft laughter between two trees, and the scarf we once shared. We had left so many words unspoken, yet they echoed louder than anything we ever said. As life moved on, I met new people. I chased new dreams. I faced struggles I hadn't known before. Even love returned to me in different forms, some soft, some fleeting, some almost real. But none of them replaced that first feeling. They only added new pages to the story of who I was becoming. On quiet evenings, I often walked through familiar streets places where I had once waited for her. The city had changed over time. New buildings stood tall where old ones used to lean with age. The flowers planted along the path were not the same. Even the breeze seemed to sing a different tune. Yet the memories stayed untouched, held gently in the quietest corner of my heart. They were like an old book I never reopened, but somehow I always remembered every line. I never shared the full story with anyone, not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't need to be told. Some stories feel too delicate for words. Some emotions are like music that only lives in stillness. Then, one autumn, many years later, something unexpected happened during a quiet gathering in another town. It was an event where families from long ago came together to remember the past and share old memories. I sat among them, calm and quiet, sipping warm tea while they laughed and talked. Then a woman walked over to me. Her voice was gentle, and her eyes were kind and knowing. She told me she had once known the princess. She spoke her name like it was made of light. She said the princess had often smiled when she spoke about the old days. Then she said something I wasn't ready for, that the princess had kept a small box with private things inside. There were letters and a pressed flower, a red one. My heart slowed. I looked at the ground and felt everything stop around me. I didn't need to ask what kind of flower it was. I remembered it clearly. I had given her that flower long ago, my hand shaking, unsure if it meant anything at all, and she had kept it. Through all those years, across all her travels, she had held onto that single flower. It was like hearing a soft whisper carried across time, something I had been waiting my whole life to hear. Maybe she had cared for me in her own quiet way. Not the way I loved her, perhaps, but still. It was love. Love doesn't always wear the same face. Sometimes it hides in small things, in a memory, in a flower. That night, I walked under a sky full of stars, feeling the wind wrap softly around me. I wasn't sad. I didn't feel alone. I felt thankful in a way I hadn't before. To love someone deeply, even once, is a rare gift. To be loved back, even for a moment, can last a lifetime. I thought about the younger version of me, the boy full of wonder and fear and unspoken hope. I smiled gently at that boy. I forgave him, and I thanked him for believing in something so fragile, because without him, I would not be the man standing here now beneath the stars remembering. The world might forget her name one day, but I know I never will. First love doesn't return. It doesn't repeat, but it never completely fades. It transforms. It becomes part of your voice, your silence, your choices, your dreams. It teaches you more than love. It teaches you how to keep living with open hands. Chapter 22, What First Love Taught Me. First love isn't just a memory, it's a lesson. It doesn't come to give you everything you desire, but to help you discover who you truly are. It touches your life softly, then fades away, but it leaves behind something lasting. Not a scar, not always joy, but a kind of wisdom no school could ever teach. I once believed love was all about happy moments, kind words, gentle hands. But I learned that love is also about waiting silence growth and letting go. My first love didn't turn into a lifelong story. We didn't marry. We didn't grow old together. We didn't even say goodbye. Yet in her short presence, she taught me more than years of living could. She showed me how powerful a glance can be, how one moment can stay in your soul forever. She showed me that people can say everything without speaking at all. That the things we don't understand at the time are often the ones that shape us most. I remember her laugh, light and real. I remember how her eyes sparkled when she teased me. I remember the cold night when she gave me her scarf. I remember the quiet garden where we shared a single flower. All these small details, they created something big inside me. That's what makes first love so special. It begins quietly, but it grows into something endless in your heart. As the years passed, I learned to live with her memory. I stopped waiting to see her again. I stopped looking for her in strangers' faces, but I never stopped being thankful. She helped me understand that love isn't about possession. It's not about always being together. Real love changes who you are. It wakes up a part of you that didn't exist before. And even if the person leaves, that part of you stays alive. That's how I carried her with me. Not in pictures or letters, but in how I saw life after her. I noticed more. I listened better. I loved with more care. Maybe that's the real lesson. First love doesn't stay forever, but it shows you what forever could feel like just for a moment. It teaches you the weight of a heart, the joy of a smile, and the pain of goodbye. And once you've felt that you are never the same again, you begin to walk through the world with softer steps because you've loved, and that changes everything. If you've ever felt the ache of first love, the sweetness, the sadness, you're not alone. You are part of a quiet, beautiful story. Even if that story ended in silence, it still matters. So don't be afraid to remember. Don't be afraid to feel it. Let the memory guide you. Let it remind you of your ability to love. Because you did love. And that will always mean something. Thank you for listening to this story with your heart. If it touched you, even just a little, I hope you'll take a moment to like this video. It helps more than you know. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Feel free to share this video with someone who might need it today. Until next time, take care and keep your heart open.